So picture this scenario, because it's one that keeps a lot of really high net worth individuals up at night. You are just absolutely crushing it in the boardroom.
Right.
The P&L looks great. The shareholders are happy. You're operating at peak efficiency. And you've basically optimized every single workflow in your professional life. But then, you drive home and the foundation is cracking.
It's the classic executive paradox, isn't it?
Exactly.
You have this intense high performance at work, but high dysfunction at home. I mean, you can manage 1,000 employees without breaking a sweat, but you literally can't manage a conversation with your spouse without it turning into like a tense negotiation or an all-out fight.
Yeah, and usually if you ask for advice, the standard response is just go to therapy. But let's be real here. If you are a CEO, a CFO, or a high-level consultant, finding an hour every Tuesday at 5 p.m. is...
It's structurally impossible.
Right. Your calendar is a war zone. You don't have time for a weekly chat.
No, you definitely don't. You look for a solution that looks like the rest of your life. Something high impact, expensive, and fast.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We're unpacking a fascinating set of documents that outline exactly that kind of solution. We've got the promotional materials, the curriculum overview, the target persona breakdown, and even the client testimonials for something called the MVP Premier Exclusive 5-Day One-on-One Coaching Intensive.
And intensive is absolutely the operating word there.
Oh, for sure. Our mission today is to figure out how this program attempts to solve relationship crises for that ultra-busy C-suite demographic by combining basically therapy with high-end luxury logistics.
Yeah, we've come through all of it, and what we're looking at isn't just standard marriage counseling. It really reads like a corporate retreat for a failing merger, except the merger is your marriage.
I love that comparison. And the stakes, they're laid out right there in the text. The hook that really caught my eye doesn't use soft language. It doesn't say, find your spark or reconnect. It explicitly promises to help you, quote, save yourself from an expensive separation or divorce.
That word expensive does a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
It really does. Most therapy brochures talk about heartbreak or loss, you know. This one talks about expense.
Well, it signals immediately who they're talking to. Because for the ultra-wealthy, divorce isn't just an emotional tragedy. It's a massive liquidation event.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Think about it. It's asset division, it's legal fees, reputation management, potential stock impacts. By framing divorce as a financial liability, they're speaking the exact language of the CFO, not just the husband or wife.
They're essentially saying, hey, this retreat costs money, but it costs a whole lot less than half your net worth.
Exactly. It's a grim hook, but an incredibly effective one.
So let's get into who this is actually for, because the source material is incredibly explicit about the target demographic. It is definitely not for everyone.
No, it's a velvet rope.
Yeah. They list them out explicitly. Established CEOs, CFOs, consultants, and leaders.
And if you look at the common thread there, aside from the obvious tax bracket, it's time poverty. The documents repeatedly cite busy schedules as the primary pain point.
Right. These are people who literally cannot afford the time for traditional incremental therapy.
They deal in quarters and fiscal years. They don't have the patience for, let's see how we feel next week. They need a sprint. And what's interesting is how the source states these high-income earning professionals need a clear path, and they actually capitalize the word clear.
C-L-E-A-R.
Right. Because executives love roadmaps. When a business unit is failing, you don't just sit around and talk about feelings. You bring in a consultant, you audit the systems, and you build a strategic roadmap with KPIs.
And this program is promising to apply that exact same methodology to a relationship.
Precisely. It destigmatizes the struggle. It reframes the marital problem as an operational inefficiency, which really appeals to the ego of a high performer.
It says, you're smart, you're successful, you just need a better strategy. Plus, it mentions the agency for couples ready to seriously work on their marriage to keep it strong even in tough times. So speaking of operations, we have to talk about the logistics.
The all-inclusive aspect.
Yeah, because this is where the luxury component goes way beyond just being fancy. When I was reading the What's Included section, it felt less like a vacation and more functional, almost engineered.
I call it friction removal.
Friction removal. Break that down for us, because the source mentions door-to-door chartered travel arrangements and access to Uber Black level local travel. Why is that necessary for therapy? Is it just to pamper them?
Not at all. Think about the last time you traveled while you were stressed or fighting with your partner.
Oh, it's a nightmare. The airport alone is a conflict zone.
Exactly. Who forgot the passports? Why is the line so long? Why did you rent the compact car when I specifically asked for the SUV? It triggers decision fatigue before you even arrive. You're fighting about the Uber driver before you even check into the hotel.
That makes so much sense. So if you're already on the brink of divorce, a delayed flight or a lost bag might literally be the thing that pushes you over the edge.
Right. So by chartering travel, literally giving you door-to-door service, they are surgically removing the logistical friction. You don't have to make a single decision about movement.
You literally just get in the car.
You get in the car, you get on the plane, you arrive. Your cognitive load is preserved entirely for the emotional work you're about to do. You aren't wasting any mental energy on travel logistics.
And that level of support continues once you're on site, too. They have 4 exclusive resort locations you can choose from. And the source lists some very specific perks. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are provided, of course, but also maid service arrangements.
Again, look at the classic sources of marital conflict. Chores. What's for dinner? Who's doing the dishes? You never help around the house. By outsourcing the domestic labor completely, they create this focused, distraction-free environment.
It's like a conflict vacuum.
Yes, you can't use "I have to do the laundry" as an excuse to avoid a difficult conversation with your spouse. You can't fight about whose turn it is to cook. All that low-level noise of domestic life is just silenced.
It reminds me of a clean room in a laboratory. They're isolating the variable, which is the relationship, to see if it can survive on its own without the daily grind.
That's a great analogy. It's an artificial environment, sure, but it's designed to force focus. When you remove the business of running a household, you are left solely with the business of being married.
And for a lot of these couples, I imagine that's terrifying because they haven't actually looked at that in years.
Exactly.
But they do include some leisure components to break it up. The source mentions free time to enjoy the area, 1 romantic meal in town on us, and 1 daytime shopping trip in town on us.
This shopping trip is fascinating to me from a psychological perspective.
Really? It sounds a bit like literal retail therapy to me. Just, here's some money, go buy something.
It does sound superficial, but think about it in the context of a couple that has completely stopped connecting. It's actually an exercise. It's forcing a positive, low-stakes interaction. It's a way to say, let's go do something frivolous together.
Oh, I see. It reminds them that they can be a team, not just combatants.
Right. It's about relearning how to have fun together in a safe, controlled way.
Okay, so you're in this luxury bubble. You have the maid, the chef, the private jet, and the shopping trips. But you were there to do serious work. So let's talk about the curriculum and the coaches. Who is actually running this thing? Because if I'm a Fortune 500 CEO, I'm not just going to hand my marriage over to just anybody.
No, and this is where the profile gets very specific. The source describes the hosts and coaches as award-winning Christian TV broadcaster producers and show hosts.
Now, Christian TV is a very specific niche.
It is. And the materials also note they are authors of 4 marriage and relationship books. Plus, the testimonials explicitly reference Christian pastors as clients.
Which provides some important context on the potential framework of the advice. But it's worth noting, the promotional copy doesn't seem overtly preachy. They aren't quoting scripture in the brochure.
No, it's heavily marketed as a high-end professional service. But that background suggests the methodology likely rests on traditional principles of commitment and restoration.
Wow.
For many in this demographic, even if they aren't deeply religious themselves, that structured, values-based approach provides a really solid foundation.
And they definitely have the reps. The source mentions over 18 years of combined coaching experience, 100 hours of workshop retreats, and 1,000 hours of recorded training.
They aren't new to this. But the format is the real key differentiator here. It's heavily emphasized that this is an immersion training.
Right, one-on-one.
Exactly. No group circles, no doing trust falls with strangers.
If you're a high-profile CEO, you definitely aren't going to sit in a folding chair in a room full of strangers and admit your marriage is failing.
You have a public reputation to protect. You need absolute privacy. So it's just the couple and the staff for 5 straight days.
5 days of intense, one-on-one relationship work. That sounds completely exhausting.
It's an immersion model. It's similar to how executives learn languages or how people learn coding at boot camps. Instead of doing 50 minutes a week for a year, which allows for a whole lot of backsliding and distraction in between, you do 40 hours in 1 week.
So they break the ego down, get to the root cause, and rebuild.
It prevents the couple from putting their masks back on. By day 3 of an intensive like this, you just can't hide anymore. You can't pretend everything is fine because you're still there in the room staring at the problem.
Before you even get to the room, though, there's a barrier to entry. The source mentions a discovery process. You have to apply and do a 15-minute pre-intensive consultation.
Which is another classic high-end consulting tactic. It makes the client feel selected rather than just sold to.
Speaking of being sold to, let's talk about the high stakes.
Yeah.
Specifically the cost and commitment. You can't hide from the financial reality of this program. They're very transparent in the documents about the payment terms.
Yeah, 50% of training cost will be required upfront to secure the custom travel arrangements.
That is a massive commitment. For most things, you maybe put down a deposit of a few $100 to hold a date.
Psychologically, that structure is brilliant. In behavioral economics, we call it sunk cost motivation. If you have already wired tens of thousands of dollars just to reserve the week, you are going to show up ready to work. You aren't going to waste time being defensive. You literally have skin in the game.
But here is the detail that completely blew my mind when I was reading the FAQ section. There's a question that specifically addresses if a company can pay for the intensive.
I circled that part in red. That is the detail that changes the entire context of this program.
The source says, quote, many participants are sponsored by their organization.
It is the most revealing sentence in the entire document.
A corporation paying for their executives' marriage counseling. Doesn't that cross a massive line between personal and professional life?
In most normal work environments, absolutely. But at the C-suite level, personal stability is a professional asset. Think about it purely from a risk management perspective.
Okay, I'm following.
If a CEO goes through a messy public divorce, their focus is completely shattered. They might make erratic business decisions. They might be distracted during a crucial merger. The stock price could literally wobble based on their personal life.
So the company essentially views the divorce as a direct liability to the shareholders.
Exactly. It is far cheaper for the board of directors to approve a $30,000 or $50,000 intensive retreat than it is to replace a CEO or weather a public scandal. It's basically key man insurance, just in the form of extreme couples therapy. It's pragmatism at its absolute highest level.
Wow. That is a level of calculation that is almost cold. But in that specific corporate ecosystem, it makes total sense.
And it validates the problem for the executive, too. It tells them, your marriage is critical infrastructure for this company. Plus, it completely removes the financial guilt from the couple. If the company is sponsoring it, it's just professional development.
And because this demographic has the money, or the corporate backing, there's high scarcity. The source notes they only host 6 to 8 intensives a year.
And clients usually book 6 months in advance.
Which brings up a really interesting catch. If my marriage is exploding today, I don't know if I can wait 6 months for a retreat.
That is the paradox of this model. It suggests this program works best for the couple that is, let's say, strategically struggling. They see the iceberg on the horizon, and they are course-correcting early, rather than the couple that has already hit the iceberg and is actively drowning.
It requires a level of foresight that perfectly aligns with the executive mindset. So for the people who do plan ahead, who do get in, what are the results? The client experiences section of the source material is glowing, obviously. But I want to look at how they describe the transformation.
The language they use is very tailored to the audience.
Yeah. For example, we have Dave and Tracy, who are identified as Christian pastors. Their testimonial says, quote, 10 years of struggle melted away during day 3.
Melted away. That implies a massive breakthrough event, a singular moment where all the tension just broke. And that's exactly what an intensive promises. A catharsis, a sudden release of pressure that you can't get in weekly, hourly sessions.
Then we have Bob and Louise. Bob is a corporate CEO. He says they initially thought they spent too much money, but they left thinking they, quote, got way more than we paid for.
He's talking about ROI.
Return on investment.
Right. He framed the healing of his marriage as an ROI. That is the ultimate validation for this specific demographic. He's essentially saying the value of the emotional repair exceeded the financial cost. He's evaluating his marriage repair exactly like a capital expenditure.
That is so telling. And then there's Jim and Ann, financial professionals. They said their cold shoulders turned into warm embraces and that they arrived with no hope and left holding hands.
That's the core emotional deliverable right there. Genuine connection.
But I have to play devil's advocate here because we talked about the bubble.
Yeah.
The maid service, the private jet, the completely friction-free, no decisions environment. Of course, it's easy to hold hands when you're being waited on hand and foot at a luxury resort and you don't have to deal with the kids' homework or the broken dishwasher.
Right. It's very easy to be in love in paradise.
So what happens when the jet lands? What happens when you walk back into your real house? The dog has thrown up on the carpet, the kids are screaming, and your inbox has 4,000 unread messages. Does it all just fall apart?
That is what therapists call the re-entry problem. It is the major failure point for almost all retreat-based therapy. Because you're right, it's easy to be a saint in paradise, but it's really hard to be a patient partner in the purgatory of everyday life. All that cognitive load we talked about comes rushing back in the second you open your front door.
So does the program actually address this? Or do they just wave goodbye at the tarmac and say, thanks for the check, good luck with the rest of your life?
They actually have a very robust answer for this stickiness factor. It's listed as a bonus in the source material, but I would argue it's probably the most critical component of the entire package for high-stakes coaching.
Oh, you mean the lifetime access? The source says lifetime access via phone, text, or video chat.
Lifetime.
That's not just a warranty on the retreat, that's an ongoing partnership.
It's a huge safety net. It means that 3 months later, when you're back in the real world and that old argument about the in-laws flares up on a random Tuesday night, you can just text your coach. You have a red phone directly to the expert who knows your exact dynamic.
So you really aren't just buying 5 days of luxury, you're buying a permanent lifeline.
Exactly. And for a busy executive, knowing that maintenance support is on demand is incredibly reassuring. They don't have to schedule a session for next week and let the resentment build up. They can address the crisis in real time. It keeps the project of the marriage active. It prevents the drift.
It's really a fascinating model when you step back and look at it. It takes all the mechanisms of high-level business, the consulting, the outsourcing, the risk management, the capital investment, and applies them directly to matters of the heart.
It completely challenges the romantic ideal, doesn't it? We like to think love should be free and effortless and organic, but this program says no, love is work, and sometimes it requires heavy machinery and a massive budget to fix.
It fully professionalizes the repair process.
And for some people, honestly, that is the only way they know how to operate. If they can turn their marriage into a structured project with a budget, a consultant, and KPIs, they can actually save it.
So just to summarize and zoom out a bit, we've looked at the who, the what, and the how much. We've seen a luxury, all-inclusive logistical masterpiece designed specifically to save the marriages of the ultra-wealthy and the ultra-busy. It paints a picture of a very specific slice of society trying to solve a very universal human problem using the tools they know best, money and strategy.
It really does. And I think it shows that no matter how much you optimize your life, the human element, the connection, the empathy, the patience is always going to be the bottleneck.
And this program tries to widen that bottleneck by just removing absolutely everything else.
By buying time and attention, pure and simple.
So keeping in mind that the source positions this as a way to avoid the expensive alternative of divorce, here's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today. We've seen how money can remove the friction. It removes the chores, the travel stress, the daily logistics, and clearly, based on the testimonials for these couples, that removal allows the love to resurface.
It clears the noise so they can finally hear each other.
But it begs the question you really have to ponder. If your relationship only works when you remove the reality of life, is the relationship actually fixed? Or have you just bought a temporary fantasy bubble?
That is the heavy question.
Does removing every single stressor prove you can be together? Or does it just prove you can be together on a highly curated vacation? Can a marriage actually survive when the maid service ends, the chartered travel stops, and the messy reality of Tuesday night sets back in?
That is the ultimate test, isn't it? Because that chartered plane eventually has to land, the bubble always pops.
It sure does. And perhaps the ultimate luxury isn't the private jet. Maybe it's the ability to find that connection while doing the dishes together.
That's the real work. The retreat just buys you the breathing room to remember why you want to do the work in the first place.
Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for unpacking this high-stakes world with us.
Always a pleasure.